Today we're going to talk about pouring events. BC and myself are, I would say we're somewhat pros at pouring events now because of
we're seasoned.
I was trying to count earlier. I think we've done maybe 10 plus at this point because of the years of the different ones we've been to. But we're going to talk about pouring events. A pouring event is an opportunity, as it said in the title, to pour your brew for someone else. And, you can do that with your friends at home all the time. But specifically, we're talking about an outsource, like going to a public place, setting up a tent and pouring stuff from that venue. And it's very different, I will say, because as we've done it many years now, like the beginning stages, it was a learning experience of like what equipment we needed. It's beyond, we're pouring stuff from kegs. If you're just doing bottles, you just haul bottles out there. But like we learned early on what equipment we need to be successful and like just certain things. So we want to talk about that and the fun it is, but also equip you to go off and do that yourself. You might have a pouring event around you that you don't know about. And it could be involved with your local homebrew club. It could be something like your zoo. Our local zoo does a zoo brew is what they call it. Yeah. They have a homebrew sector of it, which is something that, if you don't know about locally, ask around. But BC, tell me about your experience with pouring events so far. What have you enjoyed since 4 years ago when we started our first one? I guess 5, I don't know how long ago.
Yeah, we have been doing this for a while.
Yeah.
When we first started, so I think the thing to really drive home is generally these events are going to be beer events. It's beer.
Yeah.
And if you make beer, great, you're going to fit in super well. As mead guys, it was a little bit of an adjustment for us.
Yeah.
And an adjustment for the folks who are coming by our table expecting beers and us having to like educate them on what mead is.
Right.
Assure them that they're going to like it. Assure them that it's not too sweet. I mean, we get a lot of the gluten-free folks.
We get a lot of people too. Like we really do have to rope in people to try sometimes because they might have had an experience where they've gone to the pouring event called the Renaissance Fair and had something that maybe wasn't up to speed. And so then we are having to say, wait, we're a little different than that Ren Fair mead you had.
That's like an education.
So yeah, I think that's definitely a lot of like pulling beer folks in, but then also helping people like experiment with their palates to be willing to try other stuff. And to, when they hear sweet or they hear honey, to not assume that it's automatically sweet.
Yeah. So I think the funnest thing from these events is like we've now acclimated. We know our audience. We know how to we're kind of carnival barkers in and out there. We're shouting at people. We're saying, "Hey, you got an empty glass? Get over here."
Yeah. Come on, let's go.
And so like the funnest thing for me has been educating people that like on styles of mead and how it doesn't always have to be a big sweet sack mead. It can be something light and refreshing. It can be something dry. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be sweet. And so for me, it's been really gratifying to find people who've never heard of mead or have, like you said, had a bad experience with mead and show them that it can be something they like. Usually across our 4 to 6 taps, everyone will find something that they like. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they'll come back by for a refill later.
And I'll talk about that. There's a strategy to this, and that is when you go to pouring events to have a spread of things. So I'm going to return back to that. Let's talk about equipment. When we first started our first pouring event, we poured, I think we had 3 taps, if I remember. And I rolled out my kegerator, 3-tap kegerator, which is a great product to have. However, it requires you to have a truck and a way to haul something that is large.
And electricity.
So like if you don't have those things, then you're kind of out of luck. But we rolled out the kegerator and we poured and had a great time. We had 3 taps and it was great. Quickly realized we want more taps for one. And I was out of room in that kegerator. I wasn't going to go buy a second kegerator to attempt to do more. So I started to go down the trash can kegerator route.
It's not as trashy as it sounds.
It doesn't. It looks really nice, actually. I'll show some B-roll of a lot of this today. But I have in my possession now a 4-tap kegerator, trash can kegerator, and a 2-tap trash can kegerator.
The last event we were at, we poured out of every single tap. So we make use of them.
And I'll try to do a video in the future on a trash can kegerator and how to build one. It's really easy. It's a trash can with a like a tabletop on it, and then a literal tap. I mean, there's a video that can be made about it, so I will. But super easy, and you can make it look nicer by throwing a tablecloth over it, and then it doesn't look nearly as sketchy.
Yeah, you put the little drip tray under it. I mean, it looks pro.
So you need that to be able to pour things. You have to have the tower with the taps. You have to have a CO2 tank. For my setup, it's 2 CO2 tanks. And aside from that, that's about it. Ice, that's the one other thing. So
Yeah.
equipment wise, not a lot. We roll up to the venues with those 2 trash can kegerators, a table, and a tent, generally speaking.
Yeah,
kegs.
if we're outside.
Yeah, kegs full of stuff. And
Big
we've got,
menus.
yes, yeah, we do some extra stuff to like make it easier for people. You don't have to have a visual menu, but it's way nicer than trying to explain to everyone who shows up, like, oh, we have this on tap.
Yeah. They can look down the menu and make a decision based on what their preference is.
So if you have those things, maybe I'll put like a little composite list of what we take. So if you like want to go do something, you can use it as a frame of reference. Equipment, most expensive thing is a trash can kegerator or a kegerator, or you can pour straight from the taps. We have at one of our pouring events, the guy brings out an igloo cooler, and he puts all of his kegs in there. They're only sitting about halfway in this cooler. He fills it all up with ice. Obviously, all the stuff at the bottom staying cold. So when he's pouring, that tube that hits the bottom is getting cold stuff.
Yeah.
And he just uses a picnic taps, is what they're called. And you just hook it onto there.
Yep.
So you don't have to have the crazy stuff. It does help make things a little bit easier when you have a different pouring vessel.
I will say, visually, it looks more inviting to walk up and see taps and see people pulling off of rather than like just having junk everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I think we benefit from that because people go, ooh,
yeah,
these guys have a nice setup. Let's go check this out.
It's like fake professional. Well, you're like, that's a trash can. You know,
they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know.
So equipment wise, that's what you need. As far as what to take. Now, we're not going to tell you what to take, but I will say this. If you have the ability to take 2 or 3 things, try to get a spread of different things that you think people might like, between sweet and dry, or crazy flavor and maybe something more tame, to have a spread. So if someone walks up, they can try all 3, 5, 7 of your things, whatever you have, and get a different experience and find something they like.
And don't get bummed out if there's one thing that you're really proud of and you end up going home with like 4/5 of a keg. That happens every time.
Yeah.
We will have one keg that we're like,
yeah,
God, nobody drank this.
Right.
And it kind of hurts your pride a little bit, but
it's just part of it.
It is what it is.
It's also telling though, when people do taste stuff, like the things that I think will be successful sometimes work out, and then sometimes it's the thing that was thrown together last minute. One hack we use for our pouring event, one of the pouring events we do, is it's a kid, like kids are allowed to be there. They're not drinking other things. So we take a kid beverage, which is sparkling Kool-Aid. Literally, BC mixes it up like an hour before we go, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I mix it up and log roll the keg, and that's it.
It's just carbonated Kool-Aid.
It's literally Kool-Aid packets, sugar and water.
I mean, you want to talk about getting parents to come over and try your stuff when their kid is over for the 3rd time getting a glass of Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And you can be like, hey, come on over, try some of this stuff. Like, it's a good marketing moment. But there's also, like BZ said, moments where people are like, this wasn't for me, or no, I don't want to try that at all.
Yeah.
You kind of have to like schmooze them a little bit. And we do a lot of that.
We do a lot of selling.
We do a lot of selling, and it's fun. I don't know about you, but it's one of my like all-time favorite things to do related to homebrewing and mead.
Yeah, it's a blast. Like it's really gratifying because it's expensive. It's not cheap for us to do these. I spend a few $100s a year brewing specifically to give it all away at pouring event.
Yeah.
But it's really gratifying. There was an event, I think it was 2 years ago, where I brought my butter beer, and people just raved about it. And it's like, after all that recipe development, all those batches, to brew it up and then deliver that to people who largely have never had mead before, and the response is so overwhelmingly positive, it feels pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a good feeling.
It is super, like, obviously there's the other side of it too, where you might like something, and then, like we said, that keg goes home almost full. That can sting a little bit.
That hurts.
And so just be prepared for that. Like, have your expectations set that like you're going to go pour stuff, and maybe it'll all be gone, maybe some of it won't, but use that as a learning opportunity to see what those people like. Our 2 pouring events we do, I think the audiences are very different.
Yeah.
And so whenever we're going to these pouring events, we're trying to decide, like, okay, I'm going to take this to this one because I know that historically this has done well, whereas, this has not done well here.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the events we do is in a neighborhood. It's put on by like the neighborhood association or whatever in that neighborhood. Very different crowd. It's like mostly like people our age, young couples, yuppies. And then the other event is a fundraiser for a children's camp. And it's mostly beer people, a lot of beards, but a lot of girlfriends and fiancés. And so like we know with Mead, we can play to that crowd because there's a preference on that side for light, refreshing drinks. And so when almost everyone else is pouring chocolate stouts and we're pouring blueberry cinnamon mead, naturally we have an advantage when it comes to winning the audience choice. And so you got to know your crowd and you got to play the game. But I think we do a pretty good job of bringing meads that fit the audience that we're about to serve.
Right. Because we've learned that too, you might not get it on your first go. You might have to really look at the crowd and see what is selling. And it might take that second year of that pouring event, which is a long time to wait to do it again, but
enough time to brew another batch.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Pouring events are super fun and you might not have access to them. We're super lucky right now to have access to at least 2 in our world, if not a third with the zoo one that we can possibly do. The only way you're going to know about these, though, is if you get out with your local homebrew club, start asking questions, or just start Googling around you to see what is available. Mostly homebrew clubs are the big connection, though. If you are trying to tap into this world, highly recommend you do it. You do have to brew a fair amount of product. So if you're a 1-gallon batch brewer, you're going to run out of stuff real quick.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend you start making more, 5 gallons plus, in order to stock up for an event like that. But
yeah, we're usually bringing 20 to 30 gallons, depending on which event it is. And usually we're leaving with maybe 1 gallon to 2 gallons in each keg.
Yep. 4 empty sometimes, depends.
Yeah, or we're clearing through a lot of product.
So I recommend you go ask questions. I'd love to know if anyone's done pouring events. I know we have people in our Discord who have done them before and have had their own experiences. So if you are similar in experience, let us know, or different, let us know as well. But I'll put a checklist below for if you are interested in finding out what we take, use that as a template, and then I'll try and give some more B-roll of those trash can kegerators and stuff like that. And eventually I will do a trash can kegerator video. I just have to make a third one.
Another one, yeah.
So trying to decide if how I want to approach that subject. But anyways, thanks to Doing the Most for joining me for this. He does all these pouring events with me, and so we have the joy of getting to do it at least twice a year now, 3 times a year.
3 times a year. Yeah.
Yep. And so it's quite fun. Find yourself a brew buddy and go pour your mead.
Do it.
Cheers.
Spread the good word, the gospel of mead.
Gospel of mead. And beer and wine and cider.
Mostly mead.
Cheers.